and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to the third and final episode of the conversation series on the role and impact of technology in amplifying the power of coaching. My name is Meenakshi Iyer, and I'm your host and the founder and principal of Northstar Solutions and Services, which is a boutique, future work-oriented coaching, training, and consulting practice. And we serve our clients globally, and I particularly focus on mid-career technology leaders, women in technology, and cross-cultural leaders, folks like myself who speak English as an additional language. And I work with my clients in supporting their people and change leadership journeys. And I'm very happy to be not only an ICF certified coach, but also to be celebrating International Coaching Week this week. And as you may know, International Coaching Week is ICF's, which is International Coaching Federation, their week-long global celebration of the power and impact of professional coaching. And during this week, individuals like myself and organizations around the world, we come together to help everyone understand the power of coaching and what does coaching do and how it helps unlock previously untapped sources of imagination, productivity, and leadership. The theme this year for the International Coaching Week is Explore Your Potential. And so what I really wanted to do was, through this conversation series, explore the potential of technology and the role it plays in elevating and amplifying the power of coaching. And throughout this conversation series that started 2 days ago on Wednesday, in the first episode, we met with a couple of coaches. Yesterday, we met with a set of technologists who are the co-founders of Medu, which is a software platform meant for coaches and coaches alike. And today, I have the absolute pleasure of hosting and speaking to Marco Sponton and Francisco Mendes, both co-founders of another technology platform called Yerbo, which is really sort of like an assessment platform that helps coaches and consultants alike to really close the gap between them and their clients and their audiences. And so this is an assessment platform that delivers personalized insights instantaneously to the participants and the coaches and consultants alike. So Yerbo is used by executive coaches, authors, research centers, etc., to really scale their business and their brand and show progress and improve engagement at events such as live conferences as well. And I want to take a moment to share a little bit more about Marcos and Francisco. So Marcos has been in the technology space for a while. He's based in Argentina and has been recognized by Forbes as one of the 30 most promising Argentinians for using data to solve business challenges. And at the moment at Yerbo, what he's working on is really how can we use science-based well-being management and how can we democratize that? And so he's the CEO and founder of Yerbo. And Francisco, he's actually a marketing professional with more than 10 years of experience driving product-led and inside sales growth models. He's a native of Portugal and currently based in Colombia. He's someone I would call a digital nomad. And he's had plenty of experience helping early stage startups around the world, and now particularly in Latin America, help them to grow. He's the co-founder and the head of growth at Yerbo.
We don't know, Meenakshi, if he's in Colombia. Maybe he's in another place, okay? We assume he's in Colombia,
find out.
But maybe today is in yes, totally. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know why you're bullying me. I have a collared shirt. I did an effort. I tried to look presentable, and that's how you treat me. But okay. I'm in Colombia. I'm in Bogota right now.
Okay.
Oh, thank you both so much.
Okay. Okay.
Today.
So you're welcome.
Yes, and so appreciate your time, and I absolutely enjoy the banter between the two of you. And I also want to share, how we met. The first time we met was a few months ago, as I was doing research around a virtual conference that I was co-hosting, a Future of Work conference, the annual Future of Work conference through North Star, which for the last 3 years I've been co-hosting with Tiffany Castano, another solopreneur and HR consultant. And this year we dealt with the topic of burnout. And I came across the burnout index, and then I did a little bit more research, and that's how I first found out about Yerbo and the power of the technology that you have on your platform. And that's how we connected first on LinkedIn. And I want to also let everyone know that Yerbo, they let us use their assessment that we used in our conference, and that we were able to show the power of the technology. And not only that, it made a lot of sense for our audience and our speakers alike to understand where each of us were in terms of how burnt out we felt. And that was such a amazing use of technology, and it was very impactful and helped us make the event even more memorable for everyone involved. So thank you for that. And that's how this idea came about for me to talk to you a little bit more, and especially with International Coaching Week, this week being International Coaching Week. And so I really, really appreciate you both taking the time to be here. And I'm excited to hear more about Yerbo and more about your views on how technology is benefiting the world of coaching. So with that being said, I would love to invite both of you to share a little bit more about yourself, your journey, and how you came about to be at Yerbo. And I would love to kick it off with Francisco.
Okay. Well, Meenakshi, that was a lovely introduction. Thanks for that. It was our pleasure to take part in the Future of Work conference. I believe it was in April, right? It was next to the International Women's Day. I remember.
It was in March. Yeah, March 15th.
In March. Sorry. Yes, of course. So yeah, it was great seeing that, and I think that Marcos can talk a little bit more about how we've seen that technologies such as the assessments that we used in that live setting help to unlock conversations, but we'll certainly get to that. So as you mentioned, I'm Portuguese originally. I'm currently in Bogota, Colombia. I've been in Latin America for over 10 years now, and I first came here in a Portuguese government program. I didn't intend to stay. I was just coming in for 6 months, and I ended up staying and renewing those 6 months periods. And it was really, really great. I had the opportunity to join an early stage startup here that was mainly focused on helping HR do a better job by providing technology. So think of work environment surveys, think of competency skills assessments and all of that. And I was there for 8 years. We got acquired, and something that I realized throughout my period working at that company, and I was really lucky to join that company because we had the opportunity of creating multiple teams and opening up offices throughout Latin America and Europe. So that was really exciting. But at the same point, I kind of felt that we were always getting to the issues a bit late, because when you run a work environment survey, say, which is really important and gives you some macro perspectives on a lot of things, but usually when you spot something that's gone awry on the work environment survey, it's already too late. There's probably a lagging period since that problem first arose and until you can actually detect it. And so something that I was very passionate about, especially because since 2015, I've been working remotely to someone in my team, because I had a distributed team. Some part of the team was in Portugal, a part of it was in Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia. So I was always traveling between these places. So I was struggling with a lot of things that had to do not only with the remote skills and technology that we need to build. And in 2015, it wasn't as developed as it is now. So we struggled a lot with the connection and stuff like that. But I also had a lot of anti-patterns in my way of doing my job, where I was just reaching out to the team at any hours of whatever time zone I was in. And that created a bad internal practice. And my team, a lot of them were really young and they were just joining the workforce, and I was their only point of reference. And so they started doing a lot of these anti-patterns, and that clearly led some of them to a bad place in terms of their mental health. And so that was a wake-up call. And that, together with the fact that I feel that HR is getting to the problems too late, is what made me start to look at people that were working in the space of mental well-being, but with a more direct connection. And that's where I met Marcos, and I joined Marcos as a late co-founder. Marcos had already the ball rolling with Yerbo, and I jumped on board, and I haven't looked back since, and it's been an amazing journey. Marcos, tell us your story.
Excellent. Thank you, Francisco. While you were talking, I was thinking about this evolution since my early beginning. And actually, I started the last company was a machine learning solutions company. It was the largest machine learning solution company here in Latin America, and it was acquired by Mercado Libre. So even when we were very good in terms of technology, from my perspective, the real outlier, the real weird thing about that company was that we had only 3.5% of employee turnover annually. Okay. So at the end of that experience, I was thinking about why is that the well-being of teams, why is that we accept turnover by people being burned out as a natural thing, okay? Why do we accept just not fulfilled by our own job as business as usual? So we started, and what the things we have done in my last company, the thing we did in my last company, they weren't like very strange. We started by, our starting point was to throw to the garbage the classical HR book and to bring more science into the approach, let's say. At some point, empowering people, delivering, creating agency, etc., on their own decisions. And it unlocked a lot of changes in terms of allowing people to take ownership of their own well-being. With that success in mind, my main purpose after that experience was how can we scale this in order to make mental well-being abundant and not just a privilege of just a few, okay? So we went into this direction. We created this company. This company is the creator of Yerbo. We launched a couple of proof of concept. One of them was the burnout index, which is the tool you mentioned, Meenakshi. Well, right now we are into a new direction at some point because we have discovered that at some point, you coaches and consultants and trainers and facilitators, you are the translators, okay? You are the translators between the knowledge and the science and different approaches to help people achieve their goals and the people struggling with how to achieve their goals or people struggling with specific problems. So we understood that to go global and to at some point to become to deliver more impact in our direction, we need to do this by hand of coaches and consultants like you. So that's why we are essentially right now focusing to helping people like you, and actually, well, I think that it's enough as an introduction.
I loved hearing both your stories, and I loved hearing the personal aspect of it. There's things that happened that you noticed in your own careers and in your own leadership journeys. You started noticing things, and that's what really spurred you to come up with what Yerbo is today. And I know that you have had quite a few pivots as well, and that's something that we would get into as we proceed with the conversation. But I loved what Francisco, one of the things you talked about, the anti-patterns and how folks that work with you or part of your team, they really see what you're doing. And if you are their first example of a leader, then they automatically assume that that's the way to be, and how those anti-patterns sort of proliferate within organizations. And you bring up a great point, and that's something that I, as a coach, do see a lot of with my clients, and how bringing that self-awareness itself is such a big role that big takeaway for my clients from the coaching engagements. But that was a great point that you called out. And with Marcos, how you talked about folks like me as coaches and consultants and trainers being that sort of interpreter, if you will, and that pass through between the knowledge, the science-based knowledge that exists, and folks that are struggling to understand that and make it accessible in their own ecosystem. So that's wonderful what you called out. So I want to the first question that I have for both of you, having shared all this, is what is the one big shift you are seeing in the world of coaching, coaching or training? What are you seeing in terms of how the practices or how the ways of working?
Ram?
Oh, do you want to take this one? I can share.
Okay, yes. Well, I have, you're asking me for one, but I many things comes to my mind in no particular order, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to respect your question of asking just one. But I think the most important one is that today no one, and this is too natural for you. I mean, and in my experience, people like you, I mean, actually, you see this, you enjoy this, but I don't know, to be honest, if you're aware of how natural is to everyone to accept today that we need to be coached. Maybe we can discuss models and approaches. Sometimes an external coach, some other times we demand that coaching approach to our leader, etc. But we don't discuss about how much do we need to be coached by someone. And very related to that, today some minor shifts like coaching online is not being discussed anymore, or group coaching mediated by counterphobic artifacts like, I don't know, whiteboards or things like that, an assessment, are not discussed anymore. So I think that there are like major shifts in terms, without talking about AI or things like that, you can see major shifts in terms of what is the place we have for coaching in our lives, or how much do we accept coaching in our life in general, generally speaking. Of course, there is a lot of things to be done in terms of making it more accessible to everyone instead of just an elite of managers, but we don't discuss that this is a good thing, okay? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Francisco?
Yeah, I think that just to clarify, I think that what Marcos is saying is very true in the sense that we don't discuss it because it's a given already, right? So we already take it for granted that online coaching is something that we can have access to. I think that, but the main shift I've seen, at least in these latitudes, so in Latin America and even in Portugal, where coaching still was kind of looked a couple of years ago, was still kind of looked as something that, I don't know, maybe esoteric even, and so it wasn't regarded as it was by the top leadership. So as Marcus mentioned, the top leaders already knew the importance of coaching, but yeah, I would say just in terms of trends that I'm seeing a trend towards group coaching. I've seen that more and more, as we are talking to dozens of consultants and coaches in the past weeks, and we can talk more about that. But I think there's clearly a tendency by individual coaches to try and find new revenue streams, and so maybe combining B2B and B2C, maybe adding group coaching to individual practice, that will allow them to maybe scale a bit their business and their revenue model. So I've seen that, but I'm not the one best positioned maybe to judge. But I think those things I've definitely seen.
And I've heard similar things to what both of you shared. So to what you said, Marcos, in our conversations in the earlier two episodes, the same thing emerged, is that coaching for executives has been going on for many, many years, and it was probably a bit secretive, but it's no longer a secret. Now everybody knows that coaching and mentoring are valid interventions for leadership development, and it's something that you can seek at any point in your career, that it's not meant for just executives, right? So that is something that both the coaches and the Mendes co-founders also saw, and then they talked about. And I agree with you that there is value in that, and that's, for example, that is the reason why I chose to focus on the mid-career, because in my experience as a mid-career leader, as a mid to senior leader, I found that I got into that role with absolutely no support and no preparation whatsoever. But when I was a new employee or fresh out of college, the expectations were different, right? So the companies took the time to train me or provide me with whatever support I needed. And then when you hit the mid-career, it's like apparently you're supposed to know everything. And in the technology space, which is where I come from, and I know both of you would agree, like most other industries, there is you are promoted, and a lot of the promotions are your career advancement is mostly vertical, and then there is promotion, and you're promoted because of your individual hard skills, that your stuff that you're good at, and then suddenly you're said, okay, here you go, now you have a team, and with very little acknowledgement of what it takes to be a people leader, and that shift from focusing on tasks and projects to really focusing on people's success. And none of this, I wasn't prepared for any of this. And a lot of the reason why I was successful was because of my own natural traits of around empathy and curiosity, right?
Yeah.
But I made my
Yeah.
mistakes, and I have several of the same anti-patterns that Francisco was talking about a little while ago. So I am really happy to see that shift of coaching being um, to some extent being democratized within organizations. I wouldn't say in terms of financial access, but at least the fact that it is available. Like, I'm hearing of companies, even large companies, setting up their own internal coaching teams. So they're seeing the value of coaching as an intervention. And to the point that you made, Francisco, about team coaching, and there is a lot of evidence around that as well. In fact, ICF just came out this year, came out with a credential specifically for team coaching. And the reasons being, one, there is greater demand for coaching, and companies also find it harder to devote time or to carve out time for one-on-one engagements. They find more success they find it easier to do group coaching. And to think about it, if you come to think of it, we work in teams, right? So there is value in doing team coaching or group coaching, because then you're, as Professor Peter Hawkins says, you're coaching the connections. You're not just coaching the individuals. And so there is both uh, scientific based value in doing team coaching, and also from a organization standpoint, it's a little bit more feasible and probably a little bit more economical for them to do that as well. So I am seeing those similar trends, and I'm happy to hear that being reflected from technologists like yourselves as well. So speaking of this, I wanted to ask you, so I wouldn't say what is the one big thing, Marcos. You can talk about as many as you want. What are some of the top focus areas for you at Yerbo in terms of the pivots that you are making, the shifts that you are making to respond to the changing market conditions?
Yeah, well, I mentioned something at the beginning of our conversation. At the beginning, we started trying to help mainly by delivering one specific approach to our end users, to employees directly, okay? And right now we understood that we are going to have a larger impact if, instead of promoting one single approach, what we do is to create technology for coaches, for consultants. I mean, we know that essentially consultants, at some point, it's very common, the imposter syndrome, when you need to deal with technology, okay? So, but at the same time, you have a lot of power to give, a lot of power, a lot of very good guidance to help people to thrive, okay? So connecting the dots, essentially what we want to do is to be that technology team for those coaches, or to deliver technology for coaches so they can scale. If they scale, if they win, we are going to win, okay? Our purpose is going to be granted, okay? So instead of going directly to employees or to people, we are going through coaches and consultants delivering solutions. With it might be perceived as a minor change, but it's a totally different approach, okay?
Yes.
Well, we're in the middle. We're in the middle of that change right now.
Absolutely. I loved what you said, and it is true. A lot of not everyone may have the same level of fluency with technology, right? So to have someone knowledgeable, because I also understand you have in your team, you also have folks like behavioral scientists and folks like that.
Yes,
Yes.
right. We
So,
have an entire department of behavioral scientists. Yes.
right. So, and I want to ask you more about that. But the point
Mm.
is that the team that you have is, and the work that you do is based in science and is based in evidence, right? So it's an evidence-based technology that you have. And that can offer a lot of reassurance to coaches like myself, because we know that you know what you're talking about. And at the same time, you're also helping us bridge that gap. We don't have to build that technology ourselves or figure out ways to do that. So that's fantastic. So I want to hear, since I mentioned the composition of your team, can you talk to us a little bit more about um, how you go about, how you went about building this technology? So at this point, your primary customers are coaches and consultants. Is my understanding correct?
Today, yes. Today, yes,
Yes.
they are.
Okay. And do you also then specify whether it's internal coaches that are operating within an organization's ecosystem, or are these for external coaches like myself?
Prem, do you want to
Yeah,
expand?
so yeah, so we've seen all the types that you described. We have seen them gain value from using Yerbo. We do feel that the biggest value is perceived by those that work in team settings or those that work in company. I think those in particular will have the ability to have access to more use cases, because we've seen. So maybe I can take a step back and just take you through some of the things that we're seeing consultants and coaches use Yerbo for great impact. So as I don't know if we were explicit enough to say that we have an assessment platform that includes these assessments that Meenakshi was mentioning, and Marcos, that come from our behavioral science team and the work that they do, analyzing papers, doing a lot of research, and crafting these protocols that allow you to gain self-awareness or team self-awareness in terms of specific things, such as the burnout index that you mentioned. So that it would be related to burnout risk. We have psychological safety, main stressors, remote skills, leadership. There's an expanding library of assessments. So we make these available for consultants and coaches that want to customize the narrative of these assessments. So the protocol is there so that they can use it as is, but they can actually change the narrative of the results page, because the results are instantaneous. And so you can basically have a way of delivering value to each individual. And this can be something that you have open on your website that anyone can go through. And at the end, they will get their own result page, conditional to their actual responses. And that has, say, Meenakshi's wording in terms of, because you are struggling with, I don't know, showing empathy, I will recommend you read this article that I've posted, watch this webinar that we've recorded with Marcos and Francisco from Vieira, whatever it is, right? You can share those type of nuggets. So we see consultants and coaches, both B2B and B2C focused, use this as a way to showcase their authority in a field. So their level of domain authority, say psychological safety, empathy, team communication, whatever it is. You can use assessments to showcase this authority. That's one use case that we see that kind of works for everyone.
So these assessments that you referenced just now, Francisco, these are all that are pre-built. That is Yerbo has built these, right?
Yes. And so we have these assessments that can either be used as are, or they can be adapted. So for instance, Medicine Forward is an association of medical doctors from the United States, from California, and they're trying to change the way that medical doctors, the environment that medical doctors work in, right? Healthcare professionals in general. And so what they do is they adapted our burnout risk assessment for their audience. And so they have their own built-in recommendations. And obviously they're using this to help their community, because that's the purpose of Medicine Forward. But at the same time, they're asking those that are taking the assessments, once they see their results and they've learned more about themselves, they are asking them to join the association or donate, right? So you can actually use this not only to establish your authority, but also to start generating some leads to your business. So that's something that you can do. And you can either use an assessment like I just mentioned, so one of our library, or you can bring your own and you can create your own assessment from scratch, which also we've seen quite a few consultants, authors also build their own assessments using Yerbo's technology. And obviously our behavioral science team then steps in to help them in case they need some help in terms of how best to craft the protocol or the recommendation. So we always work with the author or consultant to make the most of the assessment that they're creating. But it's not only for that side. It's not only to generate awareness and authority and leads, but it's also once you're running your program, right, you can actually use assessments to do the entry, midpoint, exit assessments, and then you can compare and actually show your impact with a number, right? You can actually, because Marcus was also talking about the inefficacy, the imposter syndrome that a lot of times consultants and coaches feel towards technology. But sometimes there's also frustration in terms of how impactful have I been? They hired me again, so maybe that's means that I'm doing something right, but I don't actually have a number that I can put to it. I don't actually know if the program that I've run for 3 months at some organization, I don't know if they're implementing it 3 months after that, right?
Yes.
And so that's where we think assessments can be a great first step towards helping you have a hard number towards, is that being, but and again, maybe I'm stepping a few steps ahead. Maybe Marcos, you want to add anything there as well?
Yes, in essence, you are going into maybe the core of this conversation, which is what is coming. What is coming not only in Yerbo, but what is coming in the industry in generally speaking around coaching, related to technology. This is the topic of this conversation. Well, what we have seen is, let me start by the problem. Some problems that we see is that at some point consultants and coaches accept that the impact, they can't manage the impact of their interventions after their sessions.
Correct.
Which means you need to put all your energy during the session, and then you need to trust. Sometime is going to pass, and then someday you're going to receive a call from someone saying, okay, I want to hire you again, or someone mentioned your name, okay, and then you're going to have some feedback saying, okay, your intervention was impactful. In the middle, you don't have feedback loops.
Yes.
Okay, you don't know if that person went or that team went into the direction that you have them to go through during the training or during the program. What happens during the training, during the program, most of coaches are very, very good in terms of emotional intelligence. So it's the most likely thing is that they're going to create this hypnotic environment, okay? People feel in ecstasy at some point during the experience, okay? But it doesn't predict that all those self-actualizations generated during the program are going to deliver results or are going to be impactful after the experience, okay?
Yep.
So, and this is at some point accepted. And today that was one of the, what is the problem? The problem is that Meenakshi is looking to do this. Okay, Meenakshi want to create a healthy business, but is looking to do that mainly to generate real impact, actually to change the life of people for good, okay? So what we see is that in essence, the moment when the impact is going to be granted, the moment when the impact is going to happen, or quite the opposite, is not going to happen, is not under the control of Meenakshi.
Yep.
Okay, so we started wondering why is this happening? Okay, why is this that people just accept? Well, at the beginning, and we see many things, and I don't want to take all the time, but what we see is, for instance, during the program, you can connect with your trainees or your coaches, but after that experience, you can't. And most likely thing is that you are going to have a proxy as someone in the middle. Let's say the HR accountant executive that hired you, okay? So you can't follow on the conversations, and you can maximize the chances of change the message that happened or change the interaction that started during your program.
Yeah.
The second one is that, again, we're very focused into people managing consulting or coaching groups. And when you have a larger group, you can't deliver a hyper personalized and hyper customized message. okay? And receiving an hyper-personalized message is a very good predictor of acceptance, of engagement with that message, okay?
Yep.
So the last one is that it's very time consuming. We can talk a lot or many insights, but it's very time consuming to follow up with those conversations.
Yeah.
So what happens with all those concerns and many more in terms of generative AI? Well, here's the thing. With generative AI today, we have a lot of different options to go into the direction of having conversation asynchronous way, even when, let's say, Menakshi can customize, can train a model. So the initial conversation at some point, the first touch point of the conversation can have the Menakshi approach, the Menakshi tone, let's say all your knowledge and all your previous lessons learned based on other interactions, etc. So you can have those conversations today at scale beyond the limits or beyond the boundaries of the program or beyond the boundaries of the in-person interaction. You can make it extremely personalized, and you can also track the impact of the recommendations that emerge during that period. Okay, so my big expectation of what is coming on and of what is going on right now and what is going to happen in the near future with coaching is that what we're going to see, and that's our fight, is coaching going into the direction expanding beyond the limits of their programs. Okay, so you are going to see much more impact driven with evidence coaches going out there. Okay, so that at least that's our day by day. Okay, so I expect that this is true.
No, everything that both of you shared is absolutely fantastic and fascinating. And you would have seen me nodding away because I had the same experience last year when I did a program for a client, and I'm the external coach, and it was a 3-month program. First of all, I did all the assessments by myself using very simple Google Forms, and you're absolutely right in that it's very challenging to consolidate the results and actually draw insights from that. And then to do it, I did a start, middle, and end, and all of that. And I could absolutely relate with you with the problem that you talked about is how do I then make sure that whatever agreements were reached during the program are actually stuck with, right? That the cohort sticks to that whatever agreements we made during the program, and the improvements that we made during the program, how do they ensure that they make that a daily habit, right? Because it's so easy to go back to you're an organization's ecosystem, which is very different from the ecosystem I created with the cohort during the program. So you're absolutely right.
Exactly.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's just a microcosm, which is so transient, right? So when you shared, when I heard both of you, what I'm taking away from this is technology allowing for transactional to become transformational, right? Bridging that, right? And the other thing that you talked about, the future of coaching as you see, using technologies such as generative AI to expand the impact that an individual coach or a group of coaches can make outside of the program and not just limited to the duration of the program. And I think that's a very encouraging scenario to even think about. And I think that that's what will really lead to real change for the better with everyone that's with the coaches and the folks participating in the program. So this really yeah. So this really leads me to my next question is how does Yerbo, the use of the assessments, etc., how do you ensure that your vision is being met, the vision of you helping coaches and consultants extend their impact outside of the programs? How do you really make that happen?
Okay. Well, maybe Francisco, you want to expand? Go, please.
I want to just do one entry point, and then I'll pass the ball to you. But the best way for us to do this is to actually talk to you. So it's to talk to consultants and talk to coaches and understand their day-to-day challenges, because I have been amongst the audience of many interventions and programs, so I know how I feel on the other side, but I'm not a coach, right?
Right.
I might be a mentor to some startups and stuff like that, but I don't pretend to be a coach or to be a outside consultant going into these companies. And so what we want to do is make sure that we talk to you and folks like you and those that are in the audience. We want to conduct research, so we're actually doing research right now, so we would love to talk to any of you, because that's the best way for us to actually understand where are the gaps. And I can tell you some of the pain points that we've highlighted in the conversations we've been having in the past few months. But I think that's the place where we start. And then we know that we have the capacity to build great technology. We have done so in the past, and you can look at a lot of the things that we have out there, like the assessments, like the burnout index and stuff like that. So we know that we can build technology, but we want to build the technology that will actually impact and help you well, have the impact that you want to have. And as you mentioned, that I really like the way you put it, going from transactional to into being transformational, right? So for those consultants and coaches that are looking for that, we should be able to create something. And now Marcus can tell you about what that technology can be. I'll just add one more thing. I talk a lot, sorry for that. But just adding one more thing, which is lots of times, and sometimes consultants or coaches might lose track of this, but sometimes on my side, as the someone in the audience of a workshop or a conference, sometimes I take away something from that audience. Might be just something that I jot down on my notebook, or maybe it's actual deliverables that I get from the speaker or the facilitator, but then I don't know where they are. Right? I lose track of them. And so 2 months in, when I think, oh, what was that thing that they told me about assertive communication that was really impactful? I don't know where I have it. That's on me, because I'm obviously not the most organized person. But at the same point, that's probably not just me, right? And so I think that coaches and consultants, knowing that we as humans have this likelihood of losing track of things, and obviously we don't remember everything that we learn, then maybe that's also something that we can look into trying to help, just fostering that relationship in a way that's much more sustainable. Okay, so it was way longer an introduction that I wanted to do, Marcos, but I pass the ball to you now.
There, you have experience with entrepreneurs, Meenakshi, so you know that entrepreneurs are basically like zombies looking for research all the time, you know, looking for people to give feedback all the time during all day. Yes, that's the best way to ensure that we are learning the right things. Okay, well, essentially, let's say something on assessment. Assessment is an artifact, it's a tool, but it's a tool that the main purpose of an assessment is to unlock a conversation. Okay, it's a starting point. Okay, it's not a place it's not a goal to achieve a number during an assessment. Okay, and even more, it has if you have a metric as the goal, the most likely thing is that you miss the entire purpose of why are you doing this. Okay, this is not the okay. So an assessment is essentially an artifact that we see that naturally coaches during group sessions, they use, as mentioned in front, at the beginning, at the end, as to share, to productize a little bit of their approach, so people can have a deeper understanding of what is their approach, or what kind of problems they're going to have, or what kinds of suggestions, like next step of conversations they're going to receive during the workshop, etc. But it's just a starting point of the conversation. Okay, so all the consultants that today are using Yerbo today are using Yerbo mainly as a tool to manage those training sessions as a starting point of conversations. Okay, what are we gonna? What is the direction that we're going, and what are you gonna see of Yerbo in the next coming weeks? Hopefully, in a couple of weeks, you're going to see generative AI to allow trainees and coaches to interact asynchronously with the specific consultants and authors, which means essentially, as the use case I mentioned before, let's say that Meenakshi has a model trained by her with the specific input, with the specific examples, with the specific content. And then once you deliver a workshop, after the workshop, the most likely thing is that the people want to follow on the conversation. They can do it, but guided and curated by your input, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We are all like, at some point, like in ecstasy by using ChatGPT. And the main problem that technology like ChatGPT has is that they can just deliver crap at some point. I forgive my French, but this is like a common saying in machine learning: crap in, crap out. Okay, so and that's a problem. That's why it's very useful in this type of models where you have someone that want to curate the approach, that want to set some boundaries, or that want to use a specific input. Let's say that I'm trying to use a very specific subset of cognitive behavioral theory for approach some specific problems. I can do that, but if I am generic purpose artificial intelligence model, I won't do that. I'm going to use everything out in the internet. Okay, so having this type of moderation created by consultant is not going to be useful for the end user to not receiving crap, but also for Meenakshi to start using iteratively to start creating a model that has more and more and more her own style.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we're also using generative AI to hyper personalize the messaging. Okay.
Yeah.
And we understand that one of the most important problems at the beginning of a behavioral change is to break the resistance. Okay. Is to break the resistance with some specific words at some point that are perceived like natural for the person receiving feedback. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and you can do it at scale unless you have some automatic approaches to do it. Okay. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to do. Okay. And that's the kind of thing that we're going to see, hopefully in just 15 days live. Okay.
That's fantastic. And, what's the best way for, actually, before I do that, I have to say that everything that you've shared just now, the both of you, this is in line with what we've been hearing in the previous two conversations as well, which is that technology, including AI and generative AI, etc., is here to help us, and it's up to us to work with it to expand and elevate the power of coaching, amplify the power of coaching. It's not here to replace us as coaches. And this was something that was echoed in the other conversations as well, and something that the co-founders of Medu pointed out yesterday is that what they are doing with their technology, which is really this digital space that's shared between the coach and the coachee, and similar to you, how can they use it to use that? How can they use Medu to enable the coaches and the coachees to use that space asynchronously? And the one point that they made was how to make it less intrusive or not intrusive at all, because a lot of the nudge-based technology can be very intrusive as well. You receive way more messages than you signed up for instance, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So anyway, the theme that's emerging for me when I hear you and the other panelists is that technology is here to help us, and it's really up to us to figure out how we want to leverage technology and work side by side with it, as opposed to taking a contrarian view, right? So that's what is emerging, and that's very optimistic, right? That's very encouraging, because at the end of the day, if I, as an individual coach, if I have this customized way of increasing and scaling my impact, and that's something that I would definitely want to engage with, right? And the other thing, Marcos, that you talked about, the training models that are the data that's used for training the models, the scope and the scale of it. I totally agree with you. If it's at the ChatGPT level, then it's everything on the internet. Whereas if I, as a coach, want to use AI, generative AI, in a way that makes sense for me, then if I can have control on the data set that's used for training, and also the mode in which the data is trained, the model is trained, then that will really personalize it, and that opens up opportunities for me as an individual. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. One of the main advantages of this specific technology, of these models, large language models, is that they are at some point the dumbest technology we have created in artificial intelligence. It's extremely easy to share context to the models. Okay, so this is not science fiction on how we're going to create channels to allow people like you to train your own models. Okay, it's extremely easy. It works in natural language. Okay, so we still need to figure out what is the main user experience, but the most important end user experience, to avoid things like you mentioned. Okay, how can we create an experience that respects the space of the person, and it's not just another new layer of I don't know, of reminders and interventions, notifications, etc. But by the way, it's extremely easy for this type of technology. It's extremely easy to be context aware. Okay, so there is always going to be bad use cases. There's always going to be of every single technology. But what we're trying here is we're working on helping people like you to help others to unlock their inner purpose, for instance. And I'm very confident. I'm very optimistic on the main use case is going to be positive. Okay. So I believe in people like you, Meenakshi.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing.
And we want to make you win, okay? We want to help you to win, okay?
Yeah. This has been such a fascinating conversation, and I want to take a minute as we begin to wrap up. I want to take a minute to thank everyone who's watching us live right now, and everyone that will watch the recording, because this is going to go up on the Northstar's YouTube channel as part of the whole conversation series. And anyone that's just now joined us, want to let you know that we are talking to the co-founders of Yerbo, which is an assessment platform that can be used by coaches and consultants and trainers to drive insights and share those insights instantaneously. And as Francisco and Marcos have been sharing with us, that the whole purpose of Yerbo is to help coaches, consultants, and trainers really expand their impact outside of the duration of the programs itself. So we've been talking about what all they've done with Yerbo so far and the pivots that they have planned for the future. And as we begin to wrap up the conversation, I have a couple of final questions. One is, you talked about all the things that you're excited about. I want to hear from you, from both of you. What is it that keeps you up at night? The way the rapid pace of technology, particularly AI, the way it's going, what keeps you up at night about how things are proceeding?
Okay, some things, of course, many challenges on the ethical side of this type of advancements, and we can talk about this during hours. Other, most related to the classical interaction between the coach and coachee, how can we create the same levels of rapport and trust, even when you are giving this level of space to the technology in the middle? Okay, this is a very important thing that keeps me awake at night, because I think that this is going to be a good predictor of usage over the time. And maybe this is a kind of polemic at some point, which is how can we help to grow the industry of coaching and consulting by 10x or 100x beyond the growth of the classical monopolies, okay? Beyond the growth of the larger companies out there that at some point are monopolizing the industry, okay? So those are my concerns, you know. Fran, I don't know, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, so I agree with what Marcos said. I think I share all of those concerns. I would say in particular the last one. I think that inequality in terms of not only the monopolies that may be the ones holding all the cards in terms of the access to the be it the large language models, be it the reach in terms of having their own audiences and stuff like that. But I also would say that, not being a Luddite, which I don't think I am, I do understand the fears that people have towards what this new wave of AI that we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg now, what this can mean in terms of transformation of our economies, and in particular how those that today have are as privileged as we are in terms of working in technology, working with being on the forefront of a lot of these things. We are best positioned to also have the fruits of this revolution. But we need to remember that I can reach out to a coach and pay for a coach to help me go from this mid to senior level into the senior level. And so I think that we need to not only ourselves in terms of our relationship with coaches and consultants, we want to democratize access to the best knowledge and methodologies, and we want to do that using coaches. But I think as a society in general, we need to figure out a way to make sure that not just those that are already privileged are the ones that will benefit from this AI, be it because they own part of it, be it because they are building things on top of it as we are. But make sure that it lifts all boats. I'm not usually labeled as a socialist, but it kind of is coming out a little bit like that. But that's not the way I mean it. I mean it in actually being aware that we are very much privileged in having access to this, and we need to make sure that what is it that we're building is actually helping lift all boats. And I think that coaching is one of the things that makes the most difference. And we can look at sports and see how much coaching impacts each individual participant and the team's overall performance. So that's something that it's a big concern for me in terms of society-wise, but it's also one of the big energizers that makes me want to wake up and work on this type of hard problem.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing that. And a couple of big takeaways for me is I loved, Marcos, earlier on how you defined an assessment, and I actually wrote that down, an artifact that unlocks a conversation. I think that's a fantastic way to look at it, especially I think about it in terms of these sort of personality assessments that a lot of companies use for their employees. And there are some that puts people in boxes, but this is such a powerful reframe of an assessment that it's an artifact that unlocks a conversation. And I would love for more of us to have that view of an assessment. And Francisco, what you just shared about technology, us looking at technology and using technology to lift all boats. And I think that's another powerful reframed, powerful thought that you have. And I totally agree with you. The power of coaching, to me, coaching is one of the most impactful of human interactions, because it is that dedicated time and space for the coachee for the client to focus on what is it that they want, why do they want that, and where are they going with that time and space for them to really have this conversation with themselves in the presence of a coach who's there to guide and facilitate that conversation and ask questions that evoke awareness in the clients. And so to be able to use technology to elevate such a sacred conversation and amplify the power of coaching, I think that's it's a very powerful and a hopeful way of looking at the future. So thank you both for sharing that. And before we wrap up, I want to ask you both any words of wisdom for coaches and aspiring coaches?
The main purpose of this conversation was about technology and coaching. So I think that, I don't know, I don't have that type of wisdom, honestly, but
as a technologist,
I need a coach to have.
I need a coach to, totally. But by the way, it's just what I need is essentially what I was thinking was about that this is a matter of the choice we have in terms of what type of innovator we want to be as a coaches, okay? Because if we want to be the one that want to be a pioneer using this type of technology, this has a lot of risks. You need a lot of skin in the game to play a significant role here using this type of technology. So, and I think this is this has to be a conscious decision. Okay, what kind of play do you want to have? Do I want the artificial intelligence can have in my coaching practice or my coaching service? But maybe I'm totally biased right now because I'm working on this, but I see a lot of value on making this decision as a conscious decision and not something that just happened to me because the entire industry went into some direction. You know?
That's such a great call out and a reminder that as a coach, we each make that conscious decision of how we want to adopt technology and what kind of play we want to have. I think that's a powerful reminder for us to not feel pressure to do that just because that's the way of the industry, but for each of us to actually think through it and figure out how we want to use it. Yeah. Thank you. Francisco?
Yeah, maybe adding to that and going back to our beginnings as a mental well-being approach for people in the digital space, I would say don't beat yourself too much if you're not yet sold into the idea of using AI in your coaching practice. Don't beat yourself too much if you feel like you're struggling to understand a lot of these concepts, because we all do. and we're working on this daily. And so Marcos comes from the machine learning world and is learning every day. And I definitely I'm trying to catch up. But the thing is, don't beat yourself up too much from this. I think that be curious and be open-minded, and as Marcos said, do your homework and do your research in terms of understanding who you're partnering with and what is it that you want to accomplish with this technology or any other. But don't beat yourself too much, because change is happening really, really fast, and so no one is able to keep up with everything. So don't yeah, I would say just that to keep all of our mental health in check. Maybe don't try and do everything at once. That's probably not going to happen.
Absolutely. That's another great reminder, for us to take care of our own mental health as coaches, and also to do things on our own terms at our own pace in a way that serves our clients in the best possible way. That's another great reminder. Thank you. Thank you both. And this has been such a fantastic conversation. I've learned so much from this, and I'm sure folks watching us live and watching the recording will do the same. I will include your website and your LinkedIn profiles in the show notes so that people can get in touch with you. And once again, thank you both so much for sharing everything that you're doing at Yerbo and the bigger purpose that you have in mind as you are working on building this amazing technology at Yerbo. And thank you for sharing in the International Coaching Week celebrations with me at North Star Solutions and Services. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Meenakshi.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Meenakshi. An absolute pleasure. Thank you, everyone.